A new comprehensive investigation of convictions between 2012 to 2017 shows an extreme of Muslim immigrants among sexual offenses. That is a response to the government's refusal to give BRA the task of producing official current statistics on immigrants' crime. Peter Sweden, real name Peter Emanuelsson, is a Swedish journalist, a YouTuber, and a political commentator reporting on news from Sweden. According to the NRK, police figures from also reveal that over the past 3 years, they have investigated a total of 41 cases of rape in that city. All of these assaults, reports NRK, were carried out by non-Western immigrants to Norway. In January 2017, Morgan Johansson, Minister of Migration, announced that the government do not intend to provide the Crime Prevention Council, BRA, with the task of developing new statistics on the origin of criminals. Despite the fact that it has been a decade since the latest report and Sweden's demographics changed dramatically since then, the government's unwillingness to produce official statistics sank inspiration for the survey I have now conducted, the author writes in his preface. In total, more than 4,000 judgments are detailed on 80 pages. The survey was conducted in May-September this year, covering almost all convictions for sexual offenses between 2012 to 2017. However, data for Haparanda and Norrtälje District Court are missing because, according to the author, they refused to cooperate. Once more current information has been available from court cases, decisions have been taken. The courts are filing criminal sentences after 5 years, meaning they cannot be digitally informed, the author points out. Therefore, the survey generally contains only judgments from the second half of 2012. At the same time, judgments from the last quarter of 2017 are missing since the survey was done before. The study shows, among other things, that persons with overseas descent commit 84% of gross rape. Swedes come first in 4th place, after Afghans, Iraqis, and Somalis. Norway continued. According to the Norwegian police, the rapists terrorizing the beautiful white women of Oslo are of a Kurdish or African background and all have one thing in common, namely the use of gross violence. How about that? This news follows an earlier report in the leading Norwegian paper Aftenposten, that 33,000 asylum seekers have arrived in Norway without a passport or ID documents since 2005, and that most of them are still in Norway. According to the Aftenposten, police say there are several reasons why a large number of asylum seekers dispose of their ID documents. One is that many fear that it may be revealed that they have earlier applied for asylum in other countries. Who would have thought? All this reminds me of the section on Norway in my book, The Immigration Invasion, Chapter 6, Chapter 6 Europe Under Attack, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland 3. Norway, with a population of 4.7 million, has long had a liberal immigration and asylum policy, and as a result became home to increasing numbers of immigrants, foreign workers, and asylum seekers from various parts of the world. In 2006, immigration accounted for more than half of Norway's population growth. In that year, official statistics from Statistics Norway Bureau, SSB, showed a record 45,800 immigrants arriving in Norway, 30% higher than 2005. At the beginning of 2007, there were 415,300 persons in Norway with an immigrant background, that is, immigrants, or born of immigrant parents, comprising 8.8% of the total population. Official figures claim that 350,000 of these were from a non-Western background, including Pakistanis, Iraqis, Somalis, and Vietnamese. At least 35,000 Pakistanis were congregated in Oslo, most of whom entered the country legally as workers or through family reunification programs. At the beginning of 2005, 32% of first-generation immigrants had lived in Norway for less than 5 years, while 16% had lived in Norway for 25 years or more. A high proportion of immigrants from Iraq and Somalia have lived in Norway for less than 5 years, 57 and 55% respectively. As of January 2005, Norway's refugee population was more than 107,000, or 2.3% of the population of that country. Refugees from Iraq, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Somalia, Iran and Vietnam made up the largest groups. The non-white immigrants continue to have much higher birth rates than native Norwegians, with the result that the youth demographics show a large preponderance in favor of the non-Norwegian population. This will, like all European countries, make itself felt within the next 2 generations, once all these immigrant children reach adulthood. In 2005, 64,000 children were born in Norway of 2 foreign-born parents, compared to only 13,800 people born to parents of European origin. At current rates of third world population growth, Oslo will have a non-white majority within 2.5 decades. The primary driver is the higher immigrant birth rate, which combines with a far lower native Norwegian reproduction rate. During 2004, the immigrant population increased by 17,000, distributed between 3,800 people born in Norway of 2 foreign-born parents and 13,200 first-generation immigrants. By 2008, Third World immigration had ensured that at least 25% of Oslo's population had a non-Norwegian background. Data from the City and State Statistics Bureau shows that of Oslo's 560,484 residents, 137,878 were immigrants. The largest single immigrant group continues to be from Pakistan, with 20,313 living in Oslo. Next in line is Somalia, with 9,708 immigrants, and Sweden, with 7,462. Other countries with relatively large immigrant groups in Oslo include Sri Lanka, Iraq, Turkey, Vietnam, and Iran. This ever-increasing third world population is reflected in the country's crime rates. In 2004, a report by the NIBR, Norwegian Institute for Urban and Regional Research, warned that ethnic gangs can give Norway the kind of immigrant-related organized crime that accompanied waves of migration to the USA. Author of the report, Dr. Inger Lise, wrote, "If we look at youth under the age of 19 charged with crimes in Oslo, immigrants are unfortunately largely overrepresented. In certain Oslo districts, Furuset, Stavanger, and Gamla Oslo gang criminality has a grip. Criminal gangs becoming solid organizations is a sign in international research of an incipient mafia structure being built." Peter Sweden. Peter Sweden, real name Peter Emanuelsson, is a Swedish journalist, a YouTuber, and a political commentator reporting on news from Sweden. Follow him on Twitter here and subscribe to his YouTube here. Peter, 7 bombings in 12 days, what is going on in Sweden? That is the question I've been asking myself. This is probably the worst I have seen in Sweden so far. Previously we only had perhaps 3 bombings a month in Sweden, but now it has really been ramped up. According to Swedish police, they think some of these bombings have to do with work they have been doing in certain areas. As we all know, these certain areas are the many no-go zones that now exist in Sweden. Who do you think are behind these bombings? Most of these bombings seem to be related to migrant criminal gangs that operate and run the no-go zones in Sweden. But there is evidence to suggest the latest attack against a bar where 1 person was injured could be terrorist-related. The reason for this is that the attacker had religious texts in his backpack, and according to a witness he had what appeared to be a suicide belt on him, which police later said was not dangerous. Any ideas about how the Swedish authorities can stop this epidemic? In my opinion, the obvious solution to stop this epidemic is for the Swedish government to deploy the military into the no-go zones and clear them from these migrant criminal gangs. I very much doubt we will see that happen, at least not now. But the Moderate Party, which is one of the opposition parties in Sweden, has actually suggested they want to deploy the military in the suburbs, as they call them. At least this is a positive step forward, and a glimmer of hope for Sweden. How does it feel for you to see your home country in this state? It makes me incredibly sad. I remember Sweden as it was just 10 years ago. Peaceful. Quiet. Low crime rate. The worst things you had to deal with back then were young kids driving around loudly on mopeds. Today there are bombings on a regular basis. Not to mention the soaring rape statistics and gun crime. Would you consider going back? Sweden seems to be turning more and more into a war zone every day, and if you think about it, that's probably how these gangs feel about it too. They see this as a war in which they are trying to conquer Sweden. I wouldn't advise women to go to Sweden, but you have to remember to never lose hope. The globalist elite want you to lose hope. That's how they win. Never lose hope.